You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk, or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words, making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Hidden Traps is now available in paperback and ebook from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
Do you need a car? Been shopping only to be turned down because of bad credit, low credit, no credit, bankruptcy, or divorce? Guess what? Today's your lucky day, because now you can buy a car, truck, or SUV, just about any vehicle. It's true. Bad credit doesn't matter. No credit doesn't matter. Bankruptcy or divorce, it just doesn't matter. As a matter of fact, your job is your ticket to your new vehicle. We're Auto Credit Express, and we've helped thousands of people just like you. Antonio H. told us, great company, got me connected, and the day I went in, I drove off in the car I wanted. 100% worth your time. Need a car? Get started now and drive off as early as today. Just text FINANCE, FINANCE, to 357-911 right now to get started. That's FINANCE, FINANCE, to 357-911. Auto financing the easy way. Text FINANCE to 357-911.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Everyone loves liberty. Our rights come from God, not the government. So why are you letting other people tell you what's best for your health care? Exercise your freedom with Liberty Health Share. Liberty Health Share is a community of people who voluntarily share one another's medical costs. Liberty Health Share is founded on the idea that most people truly want to help one another. Healthcare sharing allows members to do just that as a true community that supports one another in times of need. Liberty believes people should make decisions for themselves and their families. Members are able to take back the freedom to make their own decisions about their health care. Freedom from guilt or doubt about how your money is used. You have the freedom to direct your health care, not to be dictated to by bureaucrats. Stop letting others tell you what to do and join a community of like-minded people. Exercise your freedom. Join Liberty Health Share and take back the control of your health care while helping those around you. Call Liberty at 855-58-LIBERTY. Again, that's 855-58-LIBERTY for more information, or you can check them out at libertyhealthshare.org. Again, that's libertyhealthshare.org.
My son was in the Army back during Desert Storm, but even then he wanted an MBA. He looked at a dozen schools, but only one offered the online education and flexibility he needed while he was in a tent in Iraq. Grantham University. Turns out that Grantham's been delivering affordable, relevant college and advanced degrees for over 65 years. Heck, if they can deliver a quality education to a soldier in a tent overseas, think about the flexibility Grantham can offer you so you can earn your degree too. It doesn't matter how complicated or full your life is. If getting a degree is on your bucket list, you'll want to do what my son did. You'll want to call Grantham. Find out how easy it is to get started on your education so you can check that college degree off your bucket list. Call Grantham right now. 800-910-1370. That's 800-910-1370. Flexible, affordable, relevant. Call 800-910-1370.
At St. Jude, a family never sees a bill at all. It's like the world has been lifted off of your shoulders.
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Finding cures. Saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Sometimes writers feel lost, unsure why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, offering manuscript critiques and line edits through a mentoring editorial style. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services, visit blackwolfeditorial.com.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. It is Monday, December 10th, 2018. You're listening to For Immediate Release. I'm Bill O'Reilly, and I'm joined by my guest host, Liz Neuer-Feld, who's with us tonight are you in Boston tonight, Liz, or are you in New York?
Nope, I'm in Larchmont, and I'm actually staring at my new Christmas tree that isn't decorated yet, but I did manage to drag it home yesterday, so I'm patting myself on the back.
Are you happy with it?
You know what? I love it. It's not Charlie Brown, but it's not a 10-footer. It's not a big Fraser fir like I usually do. It's 50-50. You know, Bill, I have to say, every year I find I've got fewer helping hands around here.
It's true. They get older.
Yeah. There are always a lot of critics, a lot of comments from the peanut gallery after it's up. But not a lot of help before, and definitely never any help taking it down. So now I kind of go with what feels good for me, and let the chips fall where they may.
When we were growing up, we always had. Oh, can you hear me, Liz? You okay?
I sure can. Do you have your tree?
Oh, I do. I'm sorry. I thought you said, "Can you hear me?" Yes. When we were growing up, we always had a thing where whatever Christmas it was, we would always say it was the best tree ever. And I've got to say, I think we got the best tree ever. We got it yesterday also, because people keep buying Christmas trees so early. Like I was waiting until the last week before Christmas for the last few years, and there's nothing left but, old Charlie Brown. And I think we got the best tree ever. I really do. So it's going to dry out.
Nursery?
We do. We go to the same nursery, and it's a great place. They have, hot apple cider for free inside. Then you buy, pies and apple cider donuts. It's really kind of nice, bucolic, traditional kind of Currier and I've seen. And so I went with just one daughter this year, but it was really nice. It's the way to do it. I remember in the city growing up, we would drag them down Madison Avenue. You buy them, for those who are in New York City, you know this well. But if you're not, there's tree stands that pop up, really just December 1st or right after Thanksgiving in New York, and people are dragging trees down the pavement. And when we were little, my father and five of the six O'Reillys, we were all very little, were captured by the Daily News dragging a tree home, just before Christmas, and it was a nice shot. I never found the reproduction of it, but it's a nice time of the year for that. It's a nice thing. Sounds like we both did well, Liz. And you're right.
Yeah, I know.
Fewer people to help.
Well, it's snowing down in North Carolina. God, those poor folks have really taken a beating over the last 2 years with their weather.
Isn't it crazy?
The storms, and now they've got a wild amount of snow. So I guess, no matter what happens, it looks like they're going to have a white Christmas.
But there goes the New York fantasy. Everyone up here fantasizes, well, we could always go to North Carolina to get away from the weather. And, in the last couple of years, it's true. I mean, Florida, you're going to get the occasional hurricane and it's humid. But North Carolina, in our minds anyway, it's supposed to be ideal. But, yeah, a lot of snow hitting, no question.
Well, you and I talk about going to North Carolina not to get away from the weather up north, to get away from the politics.
Exactly. Politics and taxes, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's been another crazy week in the news. I was just reading actually that Bill and Hillary Clinton have discounted the tickets to their road show because apparently the sales are not as spectacular as they were expecting. So you can now go on Groupon and get a massive discount. They had to slice the prices. So I don't know what's going on other than the fact that no one's people are looking forward instead of backwards, I think.
I've got to say, I actually feel sorry for them, only because if I were there, and I understand, I saw, who was Maureen Dowd did a column on it in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago about attending one of the, I think she paid full freight for the ticket. And when she got to the event, there weren't enough curtains to keep curtaining off the curtain section and then to curtain off the curtain section. And it was just smaller and smaller. I think they were giving away tickets for like $5. And as much as I find, particularly Bill Clinton unappealing, I know you shouldn't say that of any president, but I've always felt that way. I'm not a Hillary fan, but Bill Clinton strikes me in a very specially bad way. But, it's just unbearable to think of them coming into an auditorium or anyone and having nobody show up. But that's what happens, over time when I guess you get what you come. They live in the town next to me, so hopefully I don't run into them in the drugstore tomorrow. But that's bad, right? I mean, who convinced them that there's an audience for them? I mean, Bill Clinton couldn't be in worse.
I'll tell you. Yeah. Well, and she just did her own book tour, a year ago, so there's that. But, I don't know if you saw the Clinton Affair, which was on A&E, and now you can download it.
My wife did.
Netflix. Yeah, I did too. And first of all, you actually forget a lot of the sordid details of that era, going beyond the experience with Monica Lewinsky. But I tell you, there were many things in there that were new and newsworthy, and I think for people, everyone I've talked to saw it said, oh, God, it was even worse than I thought. And I just think the appetite for that kind of stuff, particularly now, as we know, with all of the Me Too activity, the appetite is zero. It's less than zero. So that can't be helping.
It's zero, and it makes me really happy, and not in a schadenfreude way, but in a way that it means that the rules still work. It just took a long time. I remember when the Catherine Willey 60 Minutes piece came out. It was probably 99, like somewhere around there, 98, 99. And I was living in Brooklyn at the time, and I remember I was in our kitchen, and I said to my wife, "There's no way he survives this." There was just no. She was believable. She was credible. It was a pitiful story. I mean, her husband had just committed suicide, and the story was about Bill Clinton allegedly groping her in the Oval Office. He saw that she was vulnerable, and he made his move. And it was, I was sure there's no way you can survive that. That was my, expert political opinion. And of course he did. And of course the political left all rallied around him. And I remember a few days later, I was in Manhattan, and I was going into a supermarket, and you had all the Democratic district leaders out, all the ladies out there, campaigning for Bill. We support Bill. We support Bill. And it struck me as so wrong in so many ways. And I thought, good God, the rules don't apply anymore. And that went on for, going on, 20 years, where it was, there was some conversation, but, now backed him, and there were a few feminists that broke, but it was because it was Bill Clinton, and because he said the right, kind of liberal nonsense, he could do anything he wanted. And to me, watching the collapse of the Clintons, and it's really as much, I think even more about Bill than it is about Hillary, it restores my faith that the world has a natural order. Do you know what I mean? Does that make any sense?
Well, I do. Well, and so she's featured prominently in the documentary. So you really should see it, because you seem to remember that part so vividly. But I think that right now, more women than ever before are looking at Hillary Clinton and saying, how could you be such a hypocrite? The way she annihilated the women from Arkansas in particular who had accused Bill Clinton, most of them with very hard evidence to back them up, and that they were sidelined, intimidated, humiliated, and then for her to come out and be such a women's advocate, it's galling. And I guess, I thought the whole shenanigans that Trump pulled at the debate when he paraded in several of the women and sat them in the front row, Paula Jones and others, to intimidate Hillary was pretty gross. But I'll tell you, on the other hand, it was probably the one big chance of, it's not even retribution, but it just some sense of payback that they thought she deserved. So it tends to work itself out. Sometimes you have to wait an awfully long time, but in the end, usually it happens. Yeah. Right. You're right.
It's right. The thing that I always, the thing I liked about her, and I really didn't like her for a long, long time, and I did vote for her certainly, and I wouldn't have, and I probably cut my hands off first, but was that there were a lot of Republican senators when she was in the Senate from New York, and I worked on the other side of that race, but she did win, and the report from Republican senators in Washington was that she was actually a pretty good senator, that she worked with them. She worked really hard. She kept her word. She kept her promises, and she was okay. And I always kind of remembered that and said, okay, she's at least got that. I think that I always thought that Bill got off scot-free. She was the one that took the heavy hit. For what she did to those women in Arkansas, there's no question. And the bimbo eruptions and that kind of language that she used is inexcusable. But it always drove me nuts that he got off scot-free. I remember just a few years ago, he was maybe 5 or 6 years ago, he was ranking as the top political figure in America. And I thought, this is just disgusting. This is wrong. This is, how can that be? And now it looks like history is gonna weigh on him hard, as it should. And I don't mean to sound mean or vindictive about that, but it has to matter. If you do things like that to people, it has to matter. There has to come with consequences. But they're paying for it, and now it's an empty room, and I guess I shouldn't feel badly about them. It's just, good, you cringe thinking about that. That's got to sting.
Well, it will be interesting to see how they're treated in the 2020 cycle and if they're valuable at all. Certainly fundraising. Hillary's, a prolific fundraiser. Bill used to be as well. President Clinton. So that remains to be seen. But my sense of her time during the U.S. Senate is exactly as you just characterized it. And in fact, I know a lot of people who thought she would have been very well served, as the Senate would have been, if she had stayed in that role.
Yeah, no, I think
the Secretary of State thing was she really shouldn't have gone in that direction. Well, she ran for president first, and then lost the primary, and then became Secretary of State. But maybe it's a shame that she ever left that.
And to think about the change in fortunes, and it's kind of interesting. It wasn't any one thing that did this. It was a change of attitude. But, I think Bill Clinton, you can legitimately say, propped up or put President Obama in a position to win that year. I was down at the RNC convention in Florida, and I remember it was the Romney year, and Obama was really tanking. He was done, and Bill Clinton stepped in, and he still had the juice and the political power to be a spokesman and to help Obama get back on his feet. And then the world changed the way it thought about what he did. Isn't that kind of interesting that nothing new came out really? It was that we suddenly said, no, it's not okay to do what he did to young women. And he got thrown under the bus, by history, which is kind of good.
Well, and I don't think she helped herself or them at all by the way she handled this loss. It's interesting, particularly when you look in contrast to all the coverage that we've seen on George Herbert Walker Bush 41, both with his funeral and just retrospective on his service and what happened after he lost in 92. And he very quietly went away and was very gracious, as the Bushes always are, and never second guessed or Monday morning quarterbacked either the election or any decisions that President Clinton made for those 8 years. And we know now that they ended up becoming friends years later. But look at the way, and just now you see clips where he actually was interviewed later on in life and where he talked about the loss and what it meant and how hard it was. But he didn't blame anyone but himself. He took responsibility for the things that went wrong. I think he doesn't think he got a fair shake from the press, which I would agree with, but most candidates would say the same thing. So that's not unique. But to contrast that with the way Hillary Clinton talked about her loss and blamed Obama. She blamed the Democratic Party. She blamed the DNC. She blamed the fact that there was no database, that she was starting from scratch. Billy, it just doesn't fly. People get really tired of it. And I think she lost a lot of folks in her own in the party apparatus by doing that.
I think that's right. And, it's funny. You're making me think about 16 again. And I remember Peggy Noonan had a column that said, early on, it was probably almost a year out from the race, and she wrote, I can't see any way how Hillary Clinton can lose, and I can't see any way how she can win. And it was at that point the Democrats thought she was the slam dunk. She was the one that was owed the presidency after what happened in 2004. I'm trying to think of the elections. Which was the 2000.
She lost 08.
2008, exactly,
right.
2008 when you ran, and
thank you for bringing that up again.
It was a wonderful race, and she was owed and she was the best one, and there was nobody else out there, and nobody else stood a chance. And at the same time, she was so damaged that now people look back in hindsight and say she was the worst possible candidate for the Democrats to run. But hindsight's everything. When it's convenient. But you're right. To start your point, what a week again. I mean, the Mueller stuff is getting it's getting real. I mean, that's getting real. Seems to be a lot of people sweating in Washington. I spoke with someone down there today, and apparently there's a hush over that whole city.
Well, I talked to someone today too, actually on the Hill, who said that even Trump's biggest supporters on the Hill are silent about the Michael Cohen stuff. Comey just gave his, we did another closed door session Friday, I guess it was, right? And then you have Mueller. So it was, and I don't want to mean to sound dramatic, like it was just another terrible week for the president, but the tone has really shifted now. It seems to me to almost grave.
Yeah, that's what I hear. Also, you could read the words in kind of the op-eds of the day. I think for a lot of the public, it doesn't seem like anything different happened because we've already heard these stories. Like like Cohen had talked about the stories before in the press. The press had, there were reports. A lot of these reports in the news media about the Russia meetings, about the Stormy Daniels stuff, and Avenatti, God knows, went on every television station on the planet 10 times. And bloviated, to use the other Bill O'Reilly's word, about things that had happened. But now they're coming in a legal context. Now it's coming from the special counsel's office and from a U.S. attorney's office, and that's night and day. And I think the more serious the people that are doing the they're talking about it or writing the opinion pieces about it, the smarter they are, the more established they are, the more venerable they are, the more grave the take on it, because they do realize that when you cross the federal government, there really is a price and a big one. But what do you see on the horizon? I guess for the week ahead, Liz. It could
I just think the idea now that with Manafort here, and first of all, what a sociopath. I mean, I don't know how else to characterize his behavior, lying, the way he has lied, lying about his lies, the fact that he clearly was operating at the behest of the Russians because he was indebted to them and they had stuff on him, and the triangle between the Ukraine and the oligarch, and it's just, that's terrifying to me that and it just hasn't been proved and confirmed, but that he would actually have gone into the Trump campaign as the chairman because he owed money, which then turned into payback in the form of information. I don't know how else to describe it other than terrifying. You follow
I think
the thread, but that to me is it is being sick and twisted. It's a pretty scary stuff.
It is scary stuff, and you can't. I mean, he seems to have all his eggs are in the pardon basket. I would assume. I mean, I can't understand what he's thinking, and you have. Legal minds. I'm not a legal mind at all. I'm not an attorney, but you have very good legal minds that can't figure out how he possibly screwed up this badly. Where he seems to be having continued back channel conversations with the Trump administration, which is the dumbest thing that he could do. And but he was always known as a Russia guy. I mean, this was stuff that a lot of us talked about in early 2016. Like, what is Trump doing, bringing all these Russia guys in there? And he was chief among them. I would suggest if anybody has a chance, or if you have Netflix, and I think probably YouTube would have it too, there's a very, very good documentary that came out in 17 called Winter on Fire. It's done in Ukraine, and it's captioned, but it's about the students it's 2015 it came out. It's about the students that challenged the Yanukovych government that was backed by Putin. and this was the Yanukovych government was Manafort's client. And
Mm-hmm.
It gives you a sense of the kind of people that you're dealing with. Yanukovych had promised Ukraine that he would bring the country into alliance with the West, that they saw Ukraine as the future of Ukraine as a Western future and not a Russia-centric future. And that was his election. That's what he ran on. That was his whole platform. He was elected and then immediately reneged and started to go right back into the Putin circle. And there were students that went into the middle of a square, and people know the story, but they went into the middle of the square and they protested, and police came out and batted them around, and they went back the next day and the next day and the next day, and the thing grew over a period of a year, and it gets really bad. But the documentary is shot with handheld cameras. Again, it's called Winter on Fire, and I know it's on Netflix now and probably on YouTube, but it's handheld cameras held by a lot of the students, and it shows what Manafort's client ended up doing, and the students won at the end of the day, and the Democrats won, and then of course Russia invaded Crimea, but Manafort was always known as a Russia guy, and he was an Africa guy. He would go after the tyrants, and those were his best clients. But he seems like so reckless, Liz, like you're mentioning, in how he's handled the Mueller probe. I mean, they're going to lock him up till he's 100 years dead. I mean, he seems really in trouble.
Well, and also he's in solitary because for his own safety, because they're afraid there's going to be a hit on him, which they should be now that all this information, where the rest of us are privy to the information that the guys on the inside have known for a while. So
I guess he owes the Russians. He owes some Russian businessmen several $1 million.
$7 million.
Yeah, and that was
long before he went into the campaign.
Yeah.
So
and that right, and that was the. And I think Mueller will come out with this. It's already been out in the press, but that was the deal, that he would get in there, be a central figure in the Trump world, and that was how he would repay his debt to the oligarchs. And that's tough stuff. But how do you think, Liz? Do you think that the average American is buying that this is now touching Trump directly, the president directly?
Yes, and I don't think the average anybody, 9 out of 10 people could actually connect any of these dots for you or talk about this in great detail. But I think what we're seeing is an increasingly erratic and angry president. I mean, there's no joyful warrior here. There's no happy warrior here. And this is really, you could even see him, I don't know if you watched Bush's funeral that closely, but his teeth are clenched, his eyes, he's rocking back and forth. He really, I think he just looks unnerved. And then now that he's got his chief of staff leaving with no replacement, that's just another added distraction or bigger than that, a problem. He still hasn't seemed to resolve the issue of the deal that he made in Buenos Aires over Chinese tariffs with Xi. That's still hanging out there, and the details are still hanging out there. So and then he had this week, of course, with Michael Cohen and Manafort. So a lot of bad news, and and on top of that, a very rocky Europe right now. Theresa May just postponed her vote on Brexit, which is a big problem. Look what's going on in France with Macron and the yellow vest. Angela Merkel isn't exactly a pillar of stability right now. Germany, it's a tough time.
It's a tough time, and North Korea, of course, is they haven't kept any of their deal really. I mean, some of it, I guess, but I saw somebody talk about North Korea this week and made a compelling argument that North Korea doesn't really need to talk to the U.S. now because they can talk to everybody else. Because once the president met with Kim
Jong-un.
I was going to say Sung.
Yeah.
Spoke with Kim Jong-un. The rest of the world began talking to him. It was okay to do, and so now he's got lots of alliances. You're right. It's a really complicated world right now. There's no question, and of course the stock market's going bananas, which is something that he watches, which isn't always a true measure of how the economy is doing. But it's something that's easy to explain, and that's I mean it's so volatile right now. It's crazy. I think it was down again today, 300 or 400. I'm not
Have
sure.
you seen any numbers on the retail? I know Black Friday was pretty successful. But are any other retail numbers?
No, I haven't. And but I mean, I guess the market's where people think it should be, but people seem to have really wild opinions these days because it's changing by the hours. But he's going to have a rough time. And then with Nick Ayers saying no, which is really a gutsy play when the president of the United States asks you to be chief of staff and you say no, that takes a lot of backbone. And of course,
especially when you're sitting right next to him. It's not like you're on the outside and you say, I don't want to go through this aggravation and come on the inside and you have to do the vetting and on. I mean, he's sitting at the right hand, at the elbow.
Yeah, and it actually makes it. And now there's a hole in Vice President Pence's staff too. I mean, he lost Ayers, and Ayers was considered somebody who gets that Washington work. He's a young guy; he's 38, but he's well respected, obviously, on the Hill, and he's a professional, and that seems to be a real loss. Who do you sense, Liz? If you had to guess who might be the next White House chief of staff? I mean, I know it's a tough question to ask, but any thoughts on your end?
I saw people withdrawing their names from consideration, like Mick Mulvaney,
you're out.
Don't be director.
Yep.
I don't know, Mark Meadows. I don't know why they take someone from the Hill, other than the sense there was that they need someone who had some political skills so they can get things done. I know Mnuchin was in the running, and there's signals he doesn't want it either. But I will say, he was very successful at getting the tax bill done. And so obviously he certainly has negotiating skills and had some good relationships on the Hill, and his teams, they've done well. And I'm biased because I think Tony Saig does a very good job for him. Terrific job, actually.
Yep.
I mean, that whole
he does.
Clearly that was that's been the biggest win for the president.
Oh, I completely agree. Mnuchin in that office, and Tony Saig is a dear friend of yours and mine, and that office is one of the shining, the shining offices in that administration. Agreed.
Right. And I guess you could argue why break that up because it's working. Why break something that's not broken. But Chris Christie's name's out there. It's been out there for a long time. But this could be a very good time for him to go in there. He certainly knows the legislative process. When he was governor of New Jersey, he had a Democratic legislature the whole time. He was an attorney general, so he certainly got the criminal stuff nailed. Nothing surprises him. I think he's fairly unflappable, even though he's excitable. I don't know that there isn't anything he hasn't seen. So that could end up being a good choice just because of the time. I think it's the circumstances.
I agree. I think Christie's a good choice because Chris Christie is a thug. And I really say that for what it is.
There you go.
I mean, if you need somebody, you need somebody who knows how to use political leverage and is willing to play hardball and to bend the rules to accomplish something. That's Governor Chris Christie. I mean, I'm not a big fan, and I was a big fan, and I thought he was going to be a good presidential candidate, but he turned out to be a little nefarious in my mind and duplicitous. But those come with skills, and that may not be the worst skills to bring into that position with a Donald Trump as president. That may not fly with a Ronald Reagan. That might not fly with a George Bush, but it might be, being of that ilk might work for this president. Someone, hey, come on, man, just get it done. That's whatever you might say behind the scenes. But I think that could be his saving grace. But the thing is, Trump loves to dump on Christie. Like he always sets himself up with the football, like Lucy, and then just as Christie's off balance, he pulls it away and makes him look like a fool yet again. So, but maybe his time is now. Who knows? I don't think he's doing much otherwise.
I don't think so either. And he does have a very good relationship with Giuliani, doesn't he? Continue to? I mean, and that is considering that he's the president's personal lawyer, and that could be enormously helpful.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. And I think, Giuliani, obviously, I think he's better off staying out of the administration. But yeah, he does. Yeah. I think Christie and Giuliani have a good relationship. And Giuliani's actually a cleaner guy in government. Giuliani's a hard hitter. He's a tough guy, but he's not of that ilk. I mean, Giuliani, he's got some principles in governance, but he does know him. So yeah, that's a good possibility. I would say there's a good I was going to ask you if there's anything that you saw this week that I may have missed or listeners may have missed. Kind of a must see thing of the week. Any book, op-ed, anything?
Oh yeah, well if we can say that the week started last Friday, or I guess we'll go back to last Monday, but I saw just yet another holiday story about a prince. I don't know if you saw this, about a prince of an elementary school principal out in Nebraska who was placed on leave after she sent a memo to all the teachers in her school telling them to avoid decorating their classrooms with any Christmas-themed ornaments, and that included candy canes. And this was news to me. Now, a couple of people since I read this have told me that there was
Jesus
an
canes?
issue with candy canes. Jesus canes. I've never
heard of it.
My problem.
I never heard of it.
Together with that they look like J for Jesus. I thought they had a hook you could hang them on a tree. I never got the J, but anyway, this was there was a whole list of things that you couldn't have, but I'll get to finish with the candy canes first. So they're prohibited because they have religious significance. That historically the shape is a J for Jesus, that the red is for the blood of Christ, and the white is a symbol of his resurrection, and that this makes other people uncomfortable. The last thing we'd want to do is make kids in school uncomfortable with candy canes. So for everyone's comfort, she put in the memo that no candy canes allowed. The other decorations that include Santa, Christmas trees, reindeer, green and red items, not acceptable. Not acceptable. So, I went through this, Billy, as a mayor. What kind of decorations are appropriate or not for town? It was a long time ago. The crush was banned from the village property. But, we've now gotten to the point where every community looks like Bloomingdale's. You're allowed to have, and I think you should have menorah. I think you should have whatever is appropriate for the season. Menorah, Christmas tree, but this business in classrooms, I mean, if this is really what it's come to, I think it's, all kidding aside, it's tragic. It's just sad. So I don't know, did you miss this one, or was this a scandal in your school?
No, I actually saw that story. I couldn't believe that, like a J for a candy. I mean, it was just so stupid. And but you see that stuff this time of the year. I mean, to me, it's really simple. If somebody is Christian, you say Merry Christmas. If they're Jewish, you say Happy Hanukkah. And if they're neither, you say Happy Holidays. I mean, it reminds me, and this is an overly dramatic way to put it, but it's you have ISIS going in there and just erasing any symbols of Islam that they didn't like. Blowing temples down to sand and taking out monuments and the rest of it. It's nuts. I mean, it's an illness, I think, of thinking that's crazy. I saw a pretty good another documentary. If anyone has had a chance to see it, I didn't like the beginning of it. I thought it was kind of a nothing documentary, but it was called the Creepy Line, and it's along the same lines as what you're talking about, Liz. And the Creepy Line was a documentary about Google and Facebook and Twitter. I think Twitter was the third. And it was how if they deem you politically incorrect in some way, they can erase you. You just literally disappear. I mean, so much of our lives are virtual now. But you had a Toronto professor named Jordan Peterson who was arguing, a very well-respected guy in Canada, and he was arguing that the transgender, like the changes in pronouns that people are pushing for now, they instead of him or her, and they were writing it into their laws, and he was saying that's inaccurate, it's biologically inaccurate. And so he was erased. Like his Facebook account, his Google account, literally erased, where he lost all his work on there, the Google Drive part. He just no longer existed. Like they just took him down because he had crossed some arbitrary line, or maybe somebody has the rule book on what's arbitrary and what's not. And because he had argued a point that's a perfectly valid point. And so, it's nuts. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. And you see this at universities but the candy canes, like, you gotta be kidding me. I was so relieved to see that she was laid off. Because, get real.
Someone had some sense over there in the superintendent's office.
Somebody, just common sense. I mean, whatever happened to common sense? Good Lord, But this is the stuff like we were going to have on tonight. Somebody from a program at Yale who was going to join us at a different time, and there, of course, was where that flare up started over Halloween costumes. Do you remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and it turned out to like almost campus riots. And, it just, I mean, get real. Or the comedian this week. Did you see that one? The comedian?
Kevin Hart, the comedian who was invited and then disinvited. He might be your guest for you.
I know. But there was another one too. There was a comedian who was an Indian American, East Asia Indian. And he went to Columbia, and he's a liberal apparently. His joke was about, I think the joke was something along the lines of that being gay is not a choice, because why would black people who have a hard enough also come out as being gay? It was like something in that realm. And the students threw him off campus, and turned off the mic and booed him down. And now he's like on the ban list. And it's like, what? like it's comedy, a joke is bomb.
Ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
It's a problem. How do you feel about all of the Times had a huge piece on this today about the idea that your entire world, your digital footprint essentially, is vast, and that there's no semblance at all of any privacy for anything. That not only is your data been sold, and being used for marketing and political targeting and other purposes, that just the idea that just through your apps, you go on Waze and the whole world could find out, or Google anyway, where you were and what you were doing.
Yeah, I read that this afternoon, and it is a really scary thought. And at the same time, I can't really complain because I give them everything. I'm a Chromebook guy. I use Google. I use Amazon. I'm like pathetic with Amazon. And so I give them all my data freely. But, I just assume I'll be dead before the world goes dystopian. And the evil government gets the information. But you could either I guess you could live one way or the other. And if you want to fight this stuff, you almost have to go and move into the woods and do a Unabomber routine. It's like, for my business, I need to deal with, I need computers, I need information, I need apps to move information. And when you do it though, you do give up a lot, but,
and so do you feel like the, consumers should have to opt in or opt out when it comes to their privacy, or some of this, or a lot of this ends up boiling down to reading the fine print about what people don't even know what they're giving access to. Do you mind if we use your locator number or whatever it is? Oh, sure, no problem. What do you think is the right balance between, informed consent and just, this is the way of the world and so it goes?
Yeah, I think that's right. The story in the Times talks about, you could turn it off and of course the Times, it just drives you crazy. The Times tells you how you can turn it off, and they do it from perspective of iPhones when 85% of the world market is Android. But, the New York Times is like, it's just such a kind of a cliche that they go with the more expensive iPhone, and that's kind of what's hip among progressives. But anyway, that's a side peeve. But, I think having to opt in is right, but basically you can't really benefit from most of these apps if you opt out. You don't get a full benefit from it. So it's tough. It's a tough call. But it is a little bit scary. I don't do anything that I'm really hiding from. I'm not worried that the phone is tracking me. I'm not having an affair. I'm not, doing, drug deals with the new Medellin cartel. Like I'm not, but if you're doing that stuff, you better not have a phone on you, I would imagine. I have, Alexas in my kitchen, and they're probably listening to me there. And there's embarrassing stuff you'd find. You probably say something about someone you wouldn't want known or an email. But to me, I'm at the hell with it. I'm 55. I'll die soon enough. So, you know what I mean? What are you going to do to me?
There's nothing left to hide.
There's nothing left to hide, but if it ever really turned on us, yeah, that's where my brother Jerry is, where he's really, rightly suspicious about giving away this data, because if they really wanted to get you, they can get you. All the cameras out there. You think about China. Did you see that piece a while ago about China tracking its citizens now, for greater than 90% of the day. Except for when you're asleep and they know where you are, you're on camera all the time. And it's not much better here. I mean, you're constantly on camera.
Yeah.
And if they ever want to turn it against you.
It's not that they're chasing you, they're chasing everybody.
They're chasing everybody, right. And
right.
It's, and when it's a terrorist and they catch them in 18 minutes, you say, great. But when it's just citizens, you think, ooh, like where are we going? If we had to get away from a malevolent government entity or something, we would have a hard time, getting there. It's
Do you think
everywhere.
these are big issues that our policy leaders, our policymakers, candidates should be weighing in on going into an election? And this is a broader issue about regulations, but is this something that you think, if you were interviewing people on the street, they'd say, God, this is really weighing heavy on my mind?
It's funny. That stuff never shows up in polling, but it may not be asked in polling. It may not. As you know, it depends so much what you ask and how you ask it. But sure. And another question you might ask, if you have someone, if you go to as Simon Garfunkel would say, going to the candidates debate, is do you take donations from Apple? Do you take donations from Google? Do you take them from their industry PACs? Do you take it from Amazon? Because they're writing their own legislation and giving it to members to introduce. And if anyone doesn't know that, that's what happens in legislatures all over America and in Washington, where the lobbyists will actually contribute or write out the first drafts of legislation as they want it. So those are appropriate questions to ask. They always fall down to, it's usually like, jobs in the economy or, healthcare, that kind of thing. But these are questions that absolutely, Liz, right? I mean, these are things we should be asking, because if it does turn, if you ever, and I'm not being trying not to sound like a nutcase saying, the government's going to come after us one day, but that's, there's always that possibility. And I think the founding members of the country realized that in the Second Amendment rights and in other rights, they were always concerned that a government could go sour. And it's something to think about, no question. Or say for example, Liz, if you drive between two toll booths, they now know how long it takes to get between those toll booths. When are they going to start giving you tickets because you did it too quickly? Like they could do that now, but they can get you,
Well, you know how I feel about yes, that's right. These things. This is what goes on when we're not solving the bigger problems of the world. What happened to our infrastructure plan? What happened to our debt reduction plan? What happened to our deficit reduction plan? What happened to getting the budgets done? What happened to entitlement reform? No, let's figure out. Let's raise traffic ticket revenue by using data to nail the drivers from Larchmont to Mount Kisco.
Yeah, like the red light camera legislation, and that's now coming to Westchester where we live, and it's all over New York. It's in other parts of the country now too. I did the first press release on that. It was in 1988, and I believe it was the first press release here, and it was introduced by a state senator I was working for named Roy Goodman and an assemblyman named Ivan Lafayette, and it was the red light camera bill. And it was 89 because it was put in at the request of David Dinkins, who was then mayor of New York, had just been elected, maybe 90 even. And it came from the red light cameras came from the Soviet Union and then Finland. And it was, the idea was anathema to a lot of legislators, certainly to conservative ones, because it had that big brother tone to it. The idea you go through a red light and it gets you. But, the ones who wanted it, because face it, they wanted the revenue more than anything else, would rationalize, well, it's going to save lives. It's going to, we did one study said it will save 13%. You come up with all that kind of lobbying language.
Of course.
And sure enough, it would be a test program. It was 25 cameras only. And I think the maximum fine was $50 at the time. And then do we renew, and it's sunsetted. It was like, dude, this is how stuff always gets into legislatures, you know what I mean? Okay, we'll try it. We'll do it for a 1 year sunset, and then do we renew the sunset? And it's like, oh, look at the revenue, and it looks like it could have saved lives, that kind of thing. And then it's, well, we'll extend it for 2 years, and we'll make it 100 cameras. You know what I mean? Now anywhere you go in New York, there's a red light camera. and it's, you know, it's, I'm sure, in other parts of the country as well. And there's one guy who, God bless him, but he got in big trouble in Long Island because he went out one night and started shooting them with wrist rockets or something, or throwing bricks at them. And, you know, you can't do that. I get it. And he, you know, he went to jail and got fined and the rest of it. But there was a part very deep down inside that was rooting for him, you know. Like,
not that
stop
deep
it.
down.
Not that deep down, but a little bit. I mean, I can see how, you know, you flip your lid on that stuff. It's like, stop it. Stop following me with your cameras, you know.
All right,
Crazy,
so I
you
have
know?
2 questions for you. One is, is there anything I missed that you want to flag? And the second one is, if you have given any thought or saw Time Magazine's, I guess, runner-ups or finalists for Man of the Year. So we'll start with number 1, and then we'll finish the show with the Time Man of the Year.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Anything good? Yeah, anything good that you saw that I might have missed? Probably a lot.
Yeah, you know, actually, there was, and I don't want you to keep referring to the New York Times. I just was going through it. There's a very good piece in the Times, if people get a chance to see, that's written by a gentleman named Seth Hatena. And he was the author of a book on Russia and Trump stuff. But it lays out the title of the piece is "The Dangers of Doing Favors for Donald Trump," and immediately it looks like, you know, kind of another, you know, from the headline, another anti-Trump piece, because, you know, you go through the New York Times and they're 95% anti-Trump, but it lays out a lot of you know, Trump's history with Russia and Michael Cohen's, and how, in a very easy to understand way, in how what can seem in you know, in New York thinking, or the thinking of people who are always doing kind of shortcut deals and kind of skirting the law, how like what could just be like a favor between guys, or, and I know in Yiddish they call it Menschkeit, you know, which is that relationship, you know, between men. There's like Menschkeit. And how these little favors that seem fairly innocuous in business can put you in jail for a long, long time. And when they involve a foreign country, can nail you for stuff like treason. I mean, they can really get you. And it's, again, it's the headline of the story. It's New York Times. It was written, the publication date is today, December 10th. And the title of the piece is "The Dangers of Doing Favors for Donald Trump." Seth Hatena is the author. And it's probably worth taking a read, because, I mean, I knew Michael Cohen in New York a little bit. He used to belong to my political club and ran out of there, was not the warmest guy in the world. And, but there was that, you know, it was kind of that kind of shady feeling. He was in the taxi industry, and, which always has a little kind of, you know, little, dark corners to it. But, you know, these are guys who are always whispering in the corners, and you can get away with that in business a lot of the times. But it looks like, I mean, it may end up being, you know, it may end up being the thing that takes a president down, in a really big way, in a really hard way. And when you throw in Moscow Towers and deals to, you know, to help provide information on Clinton and the rest of it, it could be really bad. You know, so it's a good piece. Definitely worth taking a look at. How about you?
Well,
do you have a particular?
I know my view of Michael Cohen. You know, this guy was what he wanted from Donald Trump for a long time in the Trump organization, right? I mean, he was flying high all over New York, and it was. You got to blame him for 100% for the decisions he made and the choices he made. How greedy can you possibly be? That this is how much more money do you need, right? I mean, come on.
Oh, totally. But these guys they would act without honor. I remember he showed up in 2000, I forgot what the year was, maybe 2004, 2002. And, I don't think he was officially working for Donald Trump, but that was like, he's a Trump guy, and he was a Democrat. And he came in, and, Republicans had been winning offices in Manhattan, which they don't do anymore. And he showed up, and we had a very good candidate running for an open seat for state assembly in 2002. And he came in and said, like, you know, I'm Donald Trump's guy, and I'm going to primary your candidate, and, like, you know, tough luck. And just realized that, you know, he came in out of nowhere. This was a Republican club that I was running, and he was a Democrat, and he was like, I'll screw you up unless you give me this. Knowing, I think, that he could leverage that for something else, and indeed he got the preferred nomination the next year for a different seat. And then he stiffed his consultants, apparently. I mean, he ran up bills and then walked away. And that's how these guys do business. And just to a great extent, that's what Donald Trump did. Trump did that in New York for years. And I know a dozen people who got stiffed by the president. That just, he'd go to the dentist and then say, screw you, just, I'm not paying my bill, just tell people you're doing my teeth. And, I know people that he's done that to. And that was the way a lot of these guys operated. And again, maybe you can get away with that when the world spotlight isn't on you. But when it's on you and there's Russians involved and there's other stuff, look out. Look out. So,
no,
I hope
you'll write a book about all these characters one day, Billy. There's not a race that you don't know. There's not a precinct you haven't worked in. You are a treasure.
No, but I didn't know Michael well. I didn't want to work on his race, but I did a column on that, and it's a small pond though. But do you know on the time of the year? Somebody asked me that question. I do a show with, as you know, Richard Brodsky each week, and we do a quiz at the end of the show. And I was asked that question. I was totally unprepared. So I'm going to start with you. Do you have a Time Person of the Year in mind? It's a great question to close with.
I think it's probably going to be, I would say Mueller. What's the criteria? Who's the most consequential? I mean, I think Khashoggi, there's, I saw his name out there. Dr. Ford, Christine Blasey Ford, Meghan Markle. I don't know why. No offense, but I don't see that. Putin. I don't know why this year was any bigger than any other year for Putin. And then Trump, obviously. And I think the president's always in the running, no matter who it is. But I don't know. I could see Mueller getting it. I think you could make the case for Mueller.
I wish I had said that. I went completely blank, and I was like, Time Person of the Year, and I babbled out Xi's name, but I think it's going to be Mueller. If I had thought about it, Mueller
Xi's
makes
a great choice.
I just think. I mean, I think he's pulling a lot of strings behind the behind the scenes. But I was thinking Mueller might be next year's Person of the Year, but he's really, kind of the big unknown out there. I could easily be Mueller, or it could be, it could be, boy, how am I forgetting the name? Ford.
Christine Blasey Ford.
Christine Blasey Ford, yeah, which is an interesting pick also. But, or Time will say, it's the insect, like time's getting, they're getting, it's, give me a break, give me a person.
Or it could be, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the new.
Oh, I thought about that too. Yeah.
Generation of, the new face of Congress, really, just collectively.
Isn't it funny though how recently it was Time Man of the Year, and now that seems so inappropriate? That was how long ago was that? 10 years ago?
Maybe it's never fun when they pick a movement, though. It's just not as good.
No, give us a person. Don't chicken out. I mean, right?
That's exactly right.
Complete. And anything on the radar for the week before we? Actually, I think we have about 2 or 3 more minutes. But anything? I mean, I think it could be a really consequential week if Mueller goes again. What do you think?
I do, and he's so. It's interesting to see the one thing that everyone says about Mueller, no matter what, is that he keeps. There's been no leaking. His timing has been entirely dictated by when he's ready. You have no idea what he can drop and when. He's done. So maybe he wanted to get everything done before Christmas. Maybe not. That's not it. But I find that it's actually gripping just watching this kind of one piece at a time. I mean, it's only, I don't know when Cohen's sentencing, I think, is next week or this week, the 16th. Is it this week? There could be something there because he may end up coming forward with other stuff between now and then just to save himself, since the prosecutors are going for maximum sentencing. But they say that he didn't really cooperate, and he certainly didn't. As you know, he didn't sign an official government cooperation agreement, so he's not entitled to any reduced sentence. So he may come forward. He might come, bawling his eyes out with some other stuff.
And I'm wondering if the Southern District is squeezing him by saying that they want prison time for him. I mean, maybe it's a play. Maybe it's a good cop, bad cop. I don't know. I don't know how these things work. You may know better, but yeah, there may be something more that comes out of Mike Cohen. I think that's right. It's
I wish we'd see less of Adam Schiff and less of this nonsense on TV. First of all, I always say this: these guys should be doing their jobs. I don't know how they find so much time to be on cable news, but I find all this stuff talking about what they're going to do here and this and that. And Trump's going to go to jail, and people are going to stop it. Wait and Just a whole
right at this point, let's just see how it plays. Yeah, exactly. And I can't help thinking that if Trump ends up in trouble or indicted, or even if it's a delayed indictment for obstruction and or for the illegal payments or campaign finance violations, there's going to be such a division in the country, because that's not enough. No one's going to break from him, or very few would break from him that are big Trump supporters. I think Mueller has to, if Republicans are going to really break from Trump, it has to involve a quid pro quo on the Russia side, a direct thing. And I've always thought that Mueller had that. I've always thought that, but it doesn't matter what I think. We're going to know soon enough. We're going to know. But if that happens, where if there was a conversation and there's a back channel that nobody knew about, or if it's a directly, if there's a person that was involved in the conversation, if the conversation occurred, you change the RNC platform over Ukraine, and that's directed from Russia, then, if that kind of thing drops and is substantiated, Republicans are going to run from this guy. That's different. That's lights out. Every one of them except for, a couple are going to run for the hills, and they're going to bury him.
I agree with you, because, I just read, I didn't see it, but I read a transcript of some of Rand Paul's comments yesterday on one of the Sunday shows, just saying, financial, filing mistakes or errors happen all the time. And he was kind of tap dancing around this issue of was it hush money and financial disclosure stuff. But when you're talking about exactly what you just laid out, that's a whole different ballgame. So we won't know until we see some facts.
We won't know until we see some facts, but it is, the Chinese are right, but interesting times. We're living in them, and it's not always a great thing. But it's never dull.
Because as Rome burns and this chaos in Europe and stuff here, he hasn't missed a beat. China has not missed a beat.
China has not missed a beat. Yeah. He's a very bright guy, and he's a scary guy, and that's right. But anyway, Dan, I guess we're probably out of time. But thank you everybody for listening. Thank you, Liz, for talking to me. If I ever shut up. Okay.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks everybody. Have a great week.
Majesties.